welcome to Mirage. This is Bryan, Aiello. Today we're going to be speculating on Stargate, and with me is Deva. He is a science fiction author and noted Stargate expert.
Hello, Bryan. Nice to meet you.
How are you doing?
I don't really see you yet, except my little picture on the screen. I'm fine, thank you. It's spring here in Sweden. I understand that you're not having a lovely spring yet there in New York.
No. I wouldn't even know if it's spring, to tell you the absolute truth. The weather's been horrid. It's been so disgusting. I mean, I guess the trees are coming alive. Does that happen in Sweden, or does it stay basically a wasteland all year round?
Wasteland. It's nothing like a wasteland. It's everything that's green kind of spring explodes into blossom during springtime. So it's sort of beautiful to watch if you're into that sort of thing. Sadly for me, I work in the basement of my house, so I barely see daylight.
What do you do for a living? I thought
I'm not a full-time writer, much as I'd love to. I'm a computer programmer.
Oh, okay. I've spoken to so many engineering, mathematical, computational people who have gone into writing. It's actually mind-boggling. So you're of the logical mindset?
You might call it that, although I think at least I have an artistic side. I hope so.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. How are you able to compartmentalize that? You have the math, and then you have to actually write a novel, which is kind of like reaching deep into other people, right?
Well, the first book I've written was a technical book on the philosophy of programming, so it was half, technical and half sort of reading and relaxing stuff. But
Really?
the next one, yeah, but that was like 15 years ago. Then I've written a thriller novel in my native language, which is Romanian, and it sort of helped to, as you say, compartmentalize. It sort of helped to separate the job from to do something that really wasn't related to numbers and programming and code at all. And it sort of helped in that direction. I was working, but not really working, Yeah.
Were you doing anything else while you were writing? It's just, I've worked a full-time job, and I've always considered myself a writer too, always punching out stories or whatever. But when I get home from a full-time job, like the last thing I want to do is write. Like
Well,
the
you
last
see,
thing.
I've been working from home for the past, what was it, 11 years. So there's that. I want to get off from the basement and to do whatever else. So it's a bit. But having worked in a corporation too, having worked on a 9 to 5 job, I certainly see your point.
Right? And then go home and then do work, or not just like melt into the couch after the day is over with. So the Romanian novel's a thriller. The science fiction novel's English. What's the science fiction novel about?
Well, the science fiction novel is called Starship Doi, which spells DOI, and that's a name. And it's about a third century Dacian, which are the people who lived in what's today Romania 2,000 years ago. So a third century Dacian, a girl from the year 1111, so 1111, and a modern day Englishman. And they all meet and have something to do with a mysterious starship. And there's no time travel involved.
Which doesn't help me segue into the topic that we're discussing today, Stargate. And it's the first of a series, or is it the first of a sequel? Do you have an ending point in mind?
I may stop after this sequel. Initially, I thought of writing 3. I thought I'd make it a nice round number, but then I figured that 2 is also a nice round number.
All numbers are kind of round, aren't they? If you look at them the right way.
Yeah, true. Well, pi maybe isn't.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
do you have a project that you would rather work on besides the science fiction novel? Are you that type of person that has like a stack of stories that he's needing to finish?
I have to say that I think I've been sitting on a story for many years now, and I'm kind of waiting to be done with the sequel to Starship Toy, so that I can work on that one. But I really need to finish this first. The first installment of the book, which is now published, has been published for years. Has enjoyed some rather good reviews on Amazon, and people have been looking forward to read the sequel. And I don't want to disappoint my readers.
Right. What if they want a third one though?
Well, they can write it themselves.
Are you thinking of working on another project? Continue. I mean, did you answer that question? I'm sorry.
Not writing related, perhaps. Yeah.
No. Okay.
Yeah, I do some stuff which isn't related to computers or writing. For instance, I love to fly. I'm a helicopter pilot in my spare time, which isn't much. And I'm also, well, you may be familiar with ham radio amateurs.
Yeah. I've never
Yeah,
messed with one myself, but that's pretty intense.
everybody has had an uncle or a granddad or somebody who has fiddled around with wires and antennas and stuff like that. Well, that's me too. I like to talk in Morse to people. And the ironic thing is, I often do it via the internet, which is really, if you think about it, I'm using Morse over the internet. That's kind of
Redundant, right?
yeah,
You're communicating in an archaic method of communication over a method to communicate.
it's a nice contrast.
So, and you love Stargate.
So again,
And you love Stargate. Stargate is
oh
the
yeah, I'm the
epitome of science
biggest.
fiction.
I'm the biggest fan of Stargate that I know, outside of some of the actors, which I also know personally.
Well, this
Were
started
good.
with a movie, right? I mean, it started with a film. Kurt Douglas was
Yes.
the guy that was acting in it. And it was an
Uh,
original idea that just spawned into being as a screenplay. Somebody wrote it out from scratch, or did it come from a source material?
it started in 1994, as you say, with Kurt Russell, and
That's it, huh?
yeah, and it was a really crappy film, to be honest,
You
movie,
didn't
as you
like
call
it?
it.
Oh man, I love the Stargate. I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I tried to get into the series many times later on, but
Uh-huh.
the episodes are very episodic, right? I mean, they stand alone as far as stories go. So it
Yeah,
bothered me that it wasn't, I don't know, maybe more,
there
maybe I
are
was
arcs in it.
poisoned.
So if you keep at it, you're going to find arcs. The first couple of seasons are, as you say, rather episodic and separate. And the reason for that is that they just hired a team of writers who, each did their own thing. But after that, once they had a dedicated team on board and started, investing into arcs, sometimes that spanned across seasons, it got a little better, and then it got a little worse. But that's the way it is.
Yeah, obviously, quality will decline. People will get bored. And the thing
Yeah,
lasted forever.
it did, and it's
2011, when it finally went away. And it
yeah,
started
there
in
were three
97.
series.
What's that?
Yeah,
Like 14 years worth of Stargate on television.
actually, even more if you count the series, if you count the years of all the individual series, because there have been three series.
Oh, you're
If
absolutely
you,
right.
yeah,
So it goes back way beyond that, doesn't it? 1994 is when it started with the
90,
film.
yeah, 94 was a film, and then they started doing the show in 97, and there were exactly two actors passed on from the film to the series. So not so many. There was just it was just Alexis Cruz and Eric Avari who went from the original film, into the series. So
Mhm.
not much heritage there, but there was also a lot of enthusiasm, and obviously there was Richard Dean Anderson, who had a great fame from MacGyver.
Yeah, big
Yeah,
fan. I loved
yeah.
him. I mean, that's one of the reasons that the show had my attention because of the lead actor.
You and many other people. Yeah, I've just seen two episodes of MacGyver today on Swedish television, and it's such a contrast. What TV meant in
Yeah.
those the early '80s and what it is now. It's fun to watch.
1980s bad television was okay because everything was bad. I mean, I've tried to watch the A Team and it was horrible.
It's some of these things are just relaxing
Yeah.
yeah,
You don't have to
just
think about it. Nobody has to
right.
get stressed out. Nobody's gonna be busting in and murdering anybody violently.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
In a way,
So
that makes them a little more immersive. I think, in a way.
yeah, you're not gonna get shocked. I mean, you know what's gonna happen at the end of it. Everybody's gonna be okay.
Yeah, you can just
Everything's
relax.
gonna be fine. Yeah, exactly. Just relax and enjoy it. Let it wash over you. Eventually, you'll wake up in the middle of Johnny Carson and carry off to bed or
Yeah,
whatever.
you're still awake. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as far as I know, the Stargate works as a portal between this dimension and various points in the universe. Like they could
Yeah,
point and open up.
it's a wormhole, and you can get transported to different planets in this galaxy and in the universe of the last two series in other galaxies as well. But you basically get to travel really far distances by just crossing through a stony ring. which is convenient, I have to say.
I mean, there's science involved in terms of what a wormhole is, what a black hole is, what a white hole is, and stuff like that. Do they kind of go into it at all, or do they kind of
Yeah,
leave it up as a magic that just works because it works?
there's a resident scientist in the Stargate team, which is called SG-1.
Yeah.
A beautiful, in both senses of the word, resident scientist played by the amazing Amanda Tapping. And yeah, and in the very first, in the pilot, she's well, we're tricked into thinking that she's a man, and then she meets Richard Donato's character, and he's surprised to see that she's a woman, and that's where it all starts. And obviously, there's a bit of romance involved at some point. But yes, she is trying to mix some science into it, and she's trying to, dazzle us with phrases that neither us, the watchers, nor anybody else in the series even pretends to understand. Yeah, it's a fun setup.
So I mean, it's, what do they call that? When you use a substance to make something work. Oh
Yeah.
God, what is that called? There's a term for it.
I don't know. You're talking about suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, like the lithium crystals in Star Trek, or it's just
Right.
a magic technical word that makes something go.
Yeah.
It's just
This is a little
nonsense,
different from
basically.
Star Trek in what fans like me consider to be a good way, because they actually, well, the premise of the show is something that they've just inherited from 1994 from the film. But other than that, everything that they've come up with, they've made an extra effort to make sure that it's actually scientifically consistent, if not really, real. But
That,
at least
that's so cool to me, is that there is a giant world kind of built up from that 1994 film.
it's really
Right.
huge. Yeah.
I mean, remember, I don't know, maybe that you missed this one, Alien Nation.
I've heard about it. I haven't seen it.
You've not seen? Oh man, the movie's great. And they did a kind of like a Stargate situation where they made the movie and then they made a television series afterward. And I loved the series too. I thought it was fantastic. The story is about an alien that comes to Earth, and not an alien, but a whole race that crashes to Earth, and they have to reside alongside humans, reach differentials or whatever.
I've heard that it's a really good show. I think it's on Netflix or.
But this type of this situation doesn't really occur very often, where a movie becomes a television series, which becomes so popular they're writing novels and other things, comics.
Not that I can think of, actually. There probably are some notable examples, but in the world of sci-fi, I think Stargate is the most well known.
Have you read any of these books?
Oh yes.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of fan fiction around Stargate, and I've read at least 20. And there's a couple of there's two ladies.
Stargate fan fiction.
Oh yeah, there's two ladies. There's two American ladies who write amazingly brilliant Stargate fiction, and they're published professionally using publishers and all that. So they're not self-published and stuff. But
wow. So
they are so much better.
Where would you recommend that somebody go to read Stargate fan fiction?
There is one of the writers is a lady called Melinda something. I'm going to find it for you.
Okay.
And by the time we're done with the recording, I'll be able to give you all the details.
Perfect. Were they publishing these books while the series was ongoing, or is this more of a recent occurrence?
It was after that, yeah. It was after that, yeah.
I think there was always fanfic. I mean, people talk about it all the time, but I think it's become more of a destination on the internet where you can go to places and read this fan fiction collected by hundreds and hundreds of writers.
Well, maybe it is. I'm just getting it off Amazon, to be honest.
Oh, you're actually buying the fan fiction off of Amazon? Oh no, yeah. Are you buying the actual novelizations of the series or new stuff?
This is new stuff. This is new stuff based on typically an episode or taking place between two specific episodes. But it's it's not a novelization of what's already been done. It's new
stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
And these are all fan fiction. These aren't coming through official Stargate productions.
No, they're not. No. Well, the rights, I'm led to understand that somehow sold or resold or whatever has to be done so that they are allowed to publish Stargate, concepts, to talk about Stargate concepts. But other than that, they're just fans who made a nice living writing about Stargate and continuing and picking up on the idea and just making themselves famous in the process.
I mean, you could really kind of break apart the science though too, because I mean, it's really magnificent wormholes. It's in Star Trek as well. Are you a Trekkie?
Not particularly, I have to say, no, but
No.
there are some connections with Stargate and that I can explore sometimes.
What do you mean?
Well, yeah, you do know that the episode 1, 2, and 3 were made recently. The ones that were made in the 70s and 80s were started with episode 4.
Are you talking about the?
Sorry, I switched to Star Wars. My bad. You said Star Trek.
Yeah, it did say Star Trek.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was completely lost for a minute.
I'm sorry, my bad. The 100th Stargate episode, okay, which was something of an occasion, and then the 200th Stargate episode were sort of like parodies. They weren't really that serious. They were sort of like individual fun stories which they just made for the occasion, and much of them deals with putting the crew of SG1 of Stargate SG1 into different TV shows. And there's a section in which they are, one of them is Captain Kirk, and they fall into the skins of the original Star Trek series. So that's one connection that I can think of off the top of my head.
Nice. I have to watch those episodes now. So it's just Star Trek.
It's not. Yeah, it's not only Stargate, but yeah, it's a nice connection. If you just Google Stargate Star Trek, you're probably going to find a screenshot or screen capture from those episodes showing the the Stargate actors in Star Trek costumes. That's kind of funny.
It is an interesting concept, right? Because the main characters of this are a military unit.
Yes, that's true. This is military fiction.
Like the first people that we send through these portals to meet these alien people are a military unit.
And not just that, they're going there with an atom bomb, with an atomic bomb, with the intention to blow everything up. This happens in the film, so yeah, it says a lot.
Do they wrestle with the idea of being good guys or bad guys through the course of the show?
Oh yes, there is much psychological conflict, and it's not only between the civilian world and the military world, but it's also between the American military world and the Russian military world, for instance. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. There's Russian scientists, which kind of feel the same as American scientists as far as war goes, but they are still on the opposite side of the boat, so to speak, although they're in the galactic context, they're all rowing in the same direction. So there are many dimensions which are explored in so many hundreds of episodes.
But as you stated earlier, these are more or less just easy things to like wash over you as you're relaxing at the end of the evening.
Well, yeah, for the most part, yes, but there are some episodes which are really deep, and they have. For instance, about let's say Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is the sort of TV show where if there's an award show, you just give the first prize to Breaking Bad just to get it out of the way,
and
then move on to then just keep going.
To Breaking Bad, everybody can go home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I gotcha.
There are some parts of Stargate which are to the rest of the series what Breaking Bad is to the world of TV. There are, for instance, a couple of episodes in season 7 which are called Heroes. And these are really deep and really emotional, really philosophical episodes, and they really, can get you thinking. And these 2 episodes were written by the proper Stargate writers, so not the newly borrowed ones. I don't want to name any names, but they're written in this case by Robert C. Cooper, which is one of the creators of Stargate, the show, and they have an amazing cast in terms of guest stars, and the story is just it just brings you to tears, and I cry every time I see them. But that's in season 7, and so that was in 2004 they were aired for the first time. So it's been a long time since then.
Robert C. Cooper is a Canadian dude, huh?
He has to be. The Stargate is a Canadian show, yeah, end to end.
I mean, it's crazy to think that um that these shows carry that much kind of weight. This guy
Mhm.
hasn't worked since he got off of that show. I mean, that was his whole life. He spent it on Stargate. I mean, it's
True.
basically
Yeah.
he cashed it in, right? Nobody wants
Well,
to hire
yeah.
him for anything else because he's a Stargate guy.
He tried to do Transporter after that. Transporter was a bit of a flop. Didn't
Dark
work as
Matter,
well.
is that Transformer? Is that Transformers?
Dark Matter is another thing. He's also worked on that. Dark Matter is the brainchild of two guys who worked on Stargate, Joe Malozzi and
Paul
Paul Molly.
Mooney?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Paul Molly or Molly, whatever. They
Molly.
always go
I don't
together
know.
wherever they go.
Oh, really?
But yeah, they always write everything together. But Bob Cooper was also a director, not just a writer for Stargate, and he wrote most of the best stuff in Stargate. And then you have the actors. You have Adam Baldwin in starring in in Heroes. Adam Baldwin of Firefly fame, and well, so many other interesting shows, sci-fi shows also. And it's well, they're not just these two. I can't say that these two are the only ones that are not shallow, because there are a lot of, for instance, the whole of Stargate universe, the third Stargate series has flopped because it was anything but shallow. It just tried to do, it just tried to be too deep, to try to get ahead of itself.
Well, I know the
It was,
movie was about an alien force, alien being that was kind of godlike, that was reminiscent of an Egyptian people. And
yeah,
the reason they ended up having to kill the Egyptian was that the Egyptian was going to kill them because they were a threat to his
right, yeah.
existence, his resource gathering, something along those lines. I can't remember what.
The mythology of Stargate involves that all of the galaxy has been, or almost all of the galaxy has been populated, has been, seeded by people from Earth who have been taken as slaves under the pretense of religion by these aliens who call themselves the Goa'uld, and who pose as gods. And you have a god which is called Ra, and all the Egyptian pantheon is there. And but they're really just aliens impersonating gods and subjugating whole civilizations through religion, and that's the basis of the mythology of Stargate. In at least the biggest and the longest show, because the last one, Stargate Universe, has very little to do with that.
What do they what are they dealing with in that
That's they
incarnation?
have a yeah they have a big starship which runs amok throughout galaxies from one galaxy to another, and all they want to do is come back. They accidentally find themselves aboard that starship, and they want to come back to Earth, and they're trying to find a way back home, and it doesn't really happen. But then it does happen, and then it doesn't, and people get pregnant, and it kind of gets soapy, as in a soap opera. And Stargate fans didn't really like that. We wanted to have the classical adventures, but at some point you have to admit that after 14 or 15 years, the steam kind of runs out.
That
So
looks like it's trying to capitalize on Battlestar Galactica,
true, yeah, that's
right?
what everybody said. Yeah,
Or
they
like
saw
Voyager, which I guess also tried to capitalize on Battlestar Galactica as well.
everything
Well,
starting with
actually, no, wait.
BSG.
What did I say? Voyager was supposed to be Battlestar Galactica, and Galactica is just a better version of Voyager. And this failed. Universe failed, right?
It kind of nobody liked it. Although it had a stellar cast. It had Robert Carlyle as a chief scientist, who's a Hollywood famed actor. But there's a lesson in this. Not everybody who tries to copy BSG, Battlestar Galactica, sort of is doomed to fail, even themselves, because they went on after BSG. They went on to do Caprica, which was a prequel to Battlestar Galactica with an awesome
Yeah, that
cast,
failed.
and also
Yeah.
excellent production values, but it still wasn't very very successful. Yeah, the curse of BSG.
Yeah, I guess, right? I mean, they lucked out, but Stargate lucked out too. Stargate was very successful with what it was, and
Mhm.
they tried to be something else. I
Yeah,
think what I mean, I don't know if you follow science fiction news or whatever, but there are these movies coming out every year called Star Wars, and they're not messing with their formula either, kind of really in a way, just giving you the same stuff over and over again. My opinion.
you're talking about the Star Wars, the
Yeah.
inter episode things,
No, what do you
episode
mean?
1.5 and stuff.
The 1.5.
Yeah, I mean they have these. What's the last one called? The episodes which aren't between 1 and 6. The sort of sub
Oh,
stories,
yeah,
but we
you're
don't
talking
get
about
to.
Rogue, like
Yeah,
Star
for
Wars
instance, yeah,
Rogue,
like
whatever
Rogue.
it
Yeah,
was. Yeah,
yeah,
Rogue Squadron. Was it Rogue Squadron? God, I'm like
Rogue something.
Rogue One. I
Rogue.
think it was Rogue One.
Yes.
Wow. Huh. I don't know what
Yeah.
Star Wars movies are called anymore. That's how many there are, actually. You have to really
Yeah.
run through a list now. What are we at? Like 8, 9, 10 movies
About
from
that, yeah.
where just a few years ago we were like, okay, prequels don't matter, and the original is the only one that really does. But what have you? I really like the idea of the seeded universe concept.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of how things are worked in their universe, Star Trek does the same thing as an
Yeah, there are.
excuse. Say again.
Yeah, there aren't all the many creepy aliens with 18 legs and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're all based on the same kind of
Humanoid.
genetic code, which
Mhm.
is what influenced by planet dynamics or whatever have you, which is fantastic. So I guess in the Stargate universe, you don't really run into a lot of non-humanoid aliens.
There are a couple. Not initially, but I think they've made them up just to try to get the ratings back up. And it was one of those valiant attempts to go down fighting, I guess, but it didn't help so much. So yeah, eventually you have all kind of aliens in Stargate. Eventually, you have people from other galaxies which didn't get a chance to be subjugated by these godlike creatures, people who personify the Egyptian gods. But then you have in the last seasons of SG1, you have an entire civilization called the Ori, which are just energy based beings of some sort, I guess. And they're really really difficult to kill and to defeat. And they hoped that that would again get the ratings back up. But by that time, Stargate was already running 2 shows in parallel, SG1 and Atlantis, and people were sort of moving over to Atlantis, and SG1 sort of had no chance. I could talk about this forever.
It's really interesting. I was just sitting here thinking about the different ideas of different types of species of aliens being so readily available in our universe. I don't even know if this is something that would appeal to the modern audiences because Star Trek, what CBS just put out, isn't faring very well, is it?
Yeah, the new ones, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not really a series about exploration anymore or experiencing new cultures. It's more about defense, closing down walls, making, you know,
Right.
less interactions happen. I
Yeah.
think it seemed very militaristic.
Well, yeah, in a way. But then again, this is open to interpretation. And when you have so many directors trying to impart their own ideas, and the studio trying to push this way and that, trying to milk every idea for what it's worth, you often lose consistency.
I get the feeling you're not a big Star Trek fan at all.
I watched Star Trek before I watched Stargate, so there's that. But I think Star Trek is a bit silly.
Do you
They're
really?
just trying to, they're just trying to talk about these greater than life concepts and ideas under the guise of sci-fi, which is fine. Which that's really what sci-fi, why sci-fi exists. But I don't think they do a very good job of it. I think it can be done a lot better. Like for instance, Battlestar Galactica proved, or the new ones like Expanse. Expanse is a gorgeous science fiction show, and
Yeah. I, and I like that. And that's utilitarian, isn't it? It's like work a day.
yeah,
I mean, they're living in space is hard and it's greasy and you could die easily. And I love it. I mean, that's really fantastic science fiction. I
yeah.
like realistic stuff. And I guess, I don't know, maybe as a culture, we're moving away from the more fantastical science fiction.
So you have to ask, why couldn't the Star Trek people do something like that? Because they had the money, they had the means, but they just didn't have the ideas. They just didn't have the content. You know.
And
So
that's interesting though, because I mean, everybody I know now writes science fiction stuff. everybody's trying to be original, and they're just harkening back to their heyday and rewriting the same scripts over and over again, right? They're going back and stealing from Battlestar Galactica with Stargate Universe, or I mean, it's like, why are you not seeing all these people that are desperate for, you know, paydays, and you're
Exactly. Yeah.
just going right back into the canon of stuff that nobody wants to watch anyway?
Well, the answer is simple: stupid executive producers.
You know what's so
Uh,
funny? What was that show with Seth MacFarlane, the science fiction that came
yeah,
out,
the one that looks a lot like.
Star Trek or whatever?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you in a minute. Actually there's only one season of it. I've seen it. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen most of it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. And the reason that it was a lot of fun was they were lampooning all
True.
these
Yeah,
science fiction Star Trek,
the
scripts
Orville
that
is called.
the Orville.
Yeah, the Orville.
It's very fun. I mean, you're talking about like something that could wash over you, and there's some humor, and nobody's going to die, and it's so ludicrous, it's beyond belief. Even
True. Yeah.
Star Trek attempted to portray some kind of seriousness to their plots.
Yeah.
Battlestar, especially, right? I mean, every episode was crucial.
Right. Yeah.
Do or die.
Actually,
There
it
was
was
always a
dramatic.
timer clocking down, if I remember when I saw an episode,
Hmm. It was
right?
really, really dramatic. Yeah, especially the first season was really dramatic. First and the last ones of Battlestar Galactica. But Star Trek is just taking itself much too seriously, and the Orville isn't. The Orville is, it's just making fun of a lot of the
Yes.
stuff that, and that's
And it's
good.
fun, and you can put it on, and you can watch it with the kids in the room, and you don't have to
Yeah.
worry about, violence or whatever happening
Uh-huh.
gratuitously on the screen in
I
front of you.
I think that makes it more real because real life, even in space, can't be non-stop drama.
Well, the thing is, we don't want real, do we? Because I mean, I think, um, like we were talking about The Expanse, and some of the stuff I've not seen the entire season. I think I'm at episode 4 or something along those lines, but it feels so like gritty when they're
Yeah,
in space or on
it's
Mars.
dark.
And
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, this is how I imagine a colony or working in space would be like.
Right.
I'm writing, some science fiction kind of like that now too, kind of these workaday, you know, people who
Mhm.
drive cargo ships or whatever. Um, yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about, who Robert Heinlein is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've read some of his books. Yeah.
I mean, if he was alive today writing his brand of fiction, and people would laugh him out of publishing, I would imagine. Those,
Well, yeah, different times. I mean, he wrote Starship Troopers. He wrote the book that Starship Troopers was based on, and Starship Troopers was a great success, which incidentally came out in the same year as Stargate. And
oh, what's very interesting though is that the Stargate movie, not the Stargate movie, but the Starship Troopers really has very little to do with the book it was written based on. Just
uh-huh.
kind of not that story that was written by Heinlein at all. So it's completely unique.
Yeah, and you have so many celebrities in it, like Michael Ironside or Neil Patrick Harris,
Yeah.
that weren't really all that well known by the time.
Yeah, I was going to say neither one of them were very famous at that point, but I think that
Uh,
movie kind of catapulted them into something new. I mean, that movie was an accident, right? It should have been not good.
yeah,
It,
true.
it, all the
Like so
it
many
all,
others.
it had all the ingredients to be horrible, but yet it was very compelling. It was very interestingly done.
But having a
And
little comedy, like they do in the Orville, in sci-fi, I find helps a lot. And I can't help thinking about the British comedy sci-fi series, like I don't know, like Red Dwarf, which
yeah,
came to be immensely popular just because they were funny.
yeah, ridiculous too. I mean, none of it makes sense. I mean, they just throw numbers. I mean, it's very Douglas Adams, right? Red
Yeah,
Dwarf.
true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, uh,
And
it's
going back to Stargate 1994 when the movie came out, it kind of had that accidental science fiction quality too, but they kind of did something cool. They took a concept that was based in science fiction and they put a war movie into it as well. Here's your
yeah,
special forces.
and there's a reason for that.
And there's
The
Indiana
reason is,
Jones too. I mean, they did like all types of cool stuff interlinked in
yeah,
that movie.
the reason for that is that Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich, who made the Stargate film, the original one in 1994, were just preparing to make Independence Day. And this was a sort of a warm-up, test bed for all the ideas that they had that they wanted to embed in Independence Day. And if you look at it, if you compare them, you'll find that there's a lot of stuff that they have in common. Like you say, the militaristic influence and the science versus military, and the implications of meeting an alien species, greeting them with an atomic bomb, and working to defeat them by whatever geek happened to be in Independence Day was what was his name, David something. You had the same theme in Stargate, played by an actor. Played by an actor who was actually called David Spader. So there's a lot of things that you can recognize from Stargate if you watch Independence Day, knowing that one was made as a test bed for the other.
No, it's very interesting because you do have Stargate in '94 and then Independence Day in '96.
Yeah.
I mean, they had some pretty cool movies working their way up to Stargate. I mean, Universal Soldier. What they had, Martians Go Home. Do you remember that? No, wait.
Maybe Martians Go Home?
No, I'm wrong. They didn't have anything. Stargate kind of popped for them, and they were like, that was our first big one. Universal Soldier. Do you remember that one with Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Yeah, Universal Soldier, yeah. 1, 2, and I think 3, too.
Yeah, they didn't have anything up until that movie, and then Stargate, Independence Day, and then Godzilla bombed them again.
Right.
Yeah. It didn't fail completely. The Patriot, which was, I liked it. People hated it, didn't go see it.
If you're American.
Then they've been horrible ever since. Eight-Legged Freaks, Cellular Flyboys, Independence Day Resurgence, which might as well not have been made.
Oh God, yes.
Geostorm and Bad Samaritan. That's what this guy, David Devlin, did with the rest of his career.
Sometimes, you just have to be thankful that you had one break.
Right. And he had a few of them, and he did not have the same kind of experience that the television people did, because as soon as they touched Stargate, that was all that would cling to them. I mean, they were like a Stargate magnet. If it wasn't Stargate, they weren't getting work, unfortunately, which is very interesting as well. Like you said, the one thing is good. I mean, if they really wanted to, they could probably do science fiction novels or something.
But making a TV series is really different from making a film, and the production of Stargate was one of the biggest success stories in television in the past 30-40 years. I think it's up on the same level with MASH, which was 2-3 decades before that.
So you're talking about in terms of the number of seasons that played through, because I think it's extremely long, like 14, something like that, maybe.
Well, yeah, that too. Yeah, but I'm talking about in terms of how well production went on, in terms of everything in Stargate was a well-oiled machine. Episodes were coming on a conveyor belt. Everybody knew. Nobody has any bad words to say about being on set or working in the production of Stargate.
That's true, man. If you think about the fact that there are 200 episodes, I don't know how many episodes are there.
There's coming up to 300. Yeah, 200.
300, almost 300 episodes is amazing.
Almost 300 in total. Yeah. But there's been hundreds of people involved, and hundreds of special effects companies, and there's just so much work. And actors, it was a coming of age for many actors who were unknown to begin with, and then became directors. Amanda Tapping started by directing some of her own episodes of Stargate, and then she produced her own show. And then you have people who started as, second camera assistants in Stargate, and by the end of it, they were directors for their own shows or writers. So,
we could talk about the lore of the science fiction itself, but honestly, I mean, that is incredibly impressive, the amount of work they put into their television series. And the fact that, Star Trek, the original series, got canceled after 3 seasons. The fans went crazy. Firefly only got half of a season. This doesn't happen, right? You have a science fiction show, it's probably going to get canceled more likely than be able to finish something.
Yes, this was an exception, a very notable exception, yeah.
Why? How did that happen? How did that? I mean, is it just that good? Did it just fit perfectly into the slot?
They just were lucky enough to work with some open-minded producers, executive producers at MGM, and then at Sci-Fi. But then these people went, and other people took their place, and everything went to hell. But it's all about as with
But
everything
the
is
show
as
continued though, right? Normally shows don't continue. Normally shows go away. Sci-fi, I guess, was new at that
yeah.
point, right? And they also did Battlestar Galactica, which
You mean the channel?
yeah,
Or the genre?
the channel didn't
Yeah,
Battlestar come out on Sci-Fi?
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
Battlestar was a really new animal at its time. I mean, there was nothing like it.
but it got
Uh,
canceled too, didn't it? At the end of the day, then they shorten it,
no,
challenge it.
they did 5 seasons. I think 4 or 5 seasons, 5 I think it was, and they were really successful, and they managed to close the entire arc at the end of it. So they were happy when it ended.
I thought that was a great series. I mean, I really enjoyed it
Oh
a
yes,
lot.
oh yes, yeah. Have you seen Caprica, the prequel?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's awesome.
I was too emotionally affected by Battlestar to get into it. I didn't want it to be bad, and it got canceled too. So I mean, I didn't want to force my way into a bad science
Yeah.
fiction series and ruin the taste that the original had in my mouth.
It's actually really good. It tells the story of how silence were invented, and it's really not what you'd expect. It's such a shame that it got cancelled after the season. But well,
Did it
when you
get to
have
finish? It didn't come close to finishing the story.
nah, no way,
No.
no, sadly. So yeah, connections. I find connections between Stargate and everything, and I started with you said Star Trek. I heard Star Wars, but there's a connection between Stargate and Star Trek, and one of the thickest tendrils that connect these two shows is John Delancey, who played Q
Q.
in
Yeah.
yeah, and he was also in Stargate, and in no less than 5 episodes as an American colonel. And there's a connection between Stargate and Star Wars, and I can pretty much think of connections between Stargate and everything else.
Right. I mean, you can play that game where actors show
Yeah,
up, right? They're all over the place because I mean these
yeah.
shows are constantly casting. This other guy, what's his name? Roland Emmerich. Emmerich.
Roland Emmerich, yes.
Yeah, he actually had a little better career after Eight-Legged Freaks, Day After Tomorrow, Trade, 10,000 BC, which was a horrible movie, 2012, which was a horrible movie. I mean, these guys really did luck out with this movie. The guys who did the writing for the series. I mean, man, they lucked out with the idea that it didn't go away, that they were able to continue it. I mean, I think because they kind of followed the Bible of science fiction TV shows. Here's a show. You don't have to work too hard. Let it wash over you. The good guys will win, and at the end of it, everything will work out. How
Right,
else?
exactly. Yeah.
I'm watching. Breaking Bad. Did you see it? I mean, you mentioned it earlier.
Oh yes, absolutely. I've seen it at least once every episode. Yeah.
There's a point where they had stolen the meth from the train. I don't know if you saw the. Yeah, okay.
And then they shoot the little guy, the guy on the
They
bike.
shoot the kid, right? I mean, it's that they shoot the kid. They steal this meth. They lie to the scary ex-Philadelphia cop, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking to myself, I'm done, and I hide the thing under my bed because I'm so freaked out by Breaking Bad. I don't watch it again and for several months and finally finish up the series. But it was horribly stressful, and you don't get that with
No,
Stargate.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's something that you can just relax into. But there's a prequel to Breaking Bad. It's called Better Call Saul. Saul Goodman, the lawyer,
Yeah,
the guy who used to
I've
be.
seen. Have you seen any of it yet?
Oh yes, I'm a big fan of it. I think it's awesome. I think it's at least as good as Breaking Bad. You should give it a try.
I'm almost caught up. I think we're gonna have the third season come out soon.
Yeah,
I'm
hopefully.
halfway through the second season.
It's
Well,
really,
I'm
really well
mostly
done.
done. I'm so mad at the brother at this point. Just it's
Well, I
really
want to be wrong.
it really is good. And this guy comes from science fiction too. The showrunner. What's his name? The
Of Breaking Bad, you mean?
mhm.
Oh,
Did X-Files.
I can't link you to. Oh, Vince Gilligan, you mean? Yeah, and X-Files, yeah.
Yes. So I mean that's another one that was fantastically lucky on Fox that ran for almost a decade, if not a little bit less or a little bit more. And now it's back again.
Yeah, I I haven't seen the new ones.
I only
I,
saw one little bit of an episode, and it dated itself back to when it left the air. which I guess I am not a big television watcher anymore. I barely have any time. I don't want to waste it on something like that. I want something more.
Yeah, making podcasts is kind of time consuming, I guess.
Well, this part's easy, just talking to people and recording it, but the writing part of my life is the time consuming part. It's like,
What do you write?
I write science fiction and fantasy, speculative stuff. I
Okay,
like the
and
occasional macabre thriller blood thingy.
to write or to read?
To write,
Right. Okay.
yeah, I can barely finish a book. Constantly starting stuff and just having a hard time finishing it. Do you read? What are you reading right now?
Oh, I certainly do. I try to read stuff in Swedish at the
Seriously.
time being, and yeah, because I live here, but I'm having such a hard time finding something good.
Yeah, me
And
too.
I mean in Swedish.
Oh, in Swedish, huh? Well, I'm having a
Yeah.
hard time finding anything good, period.
Try John
Um,
Scalzi. John
which one?
Scalzi.
I like John Scalzi. I like his Twitter account.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, there's Old Man's War, which is beyond words. It's just fantastic. Old Man's
Okay.
War. But then I've just listened. I've been on a really long car trip recently, and I've been listening to the audiobook version of Lock-in, one of his last books, Lock-in, and it's read by Will Wheaton, who played
Love Will Wheaton. I'm a big fan. I like him a lot.
Wesley Crusher. Yeah, exactly. So it's his voice. So you can give that a go. And I think John Scalzi is probably the best living sci-fi author that we have right now.
Head On is his most recent one, and the one previous to that, I read a little bit of it. I like him a lot. I liked Red Shirts. Red Shirts is probably one of my
Oh yes,
one of my
yeah,
favorite science fiction books to come out lately. I mean, it was
really
tongue
good.
in cheek, right? I mean, it's just
Uh-huh.
basically as tropey as you can get, but it was so much
Uh-huh.
fun. I loved it.
Yeah, and he writes short stories too. And one of his funniest short stories is called "The President's Brain is Missing," which is strangely, I don't know, actual. But yeah, enough about politics. There's a link between John Scalzi and Stargate, by the way. John Scalzi was a creative consultant for Stargate Universe. So
For what?
everything, Stargate Universe.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yep, so
Interesting.
everything revolves around Stargate.
So it could have sucked Scalzi into its little whirlpool of you're never getting out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
it is interesting. I mean, we can hearken to politics just for a moment. I mean, we're nearing on an hour, so I mean, I won't keep you too much longer. But the idea that Stargate came out in what, the mid '90s, like
right.
Bill Clinton was president then, and then 2001 happened, and
Yeah,
9/11 and
yeah.
what have you, George Bush's horrible reign in the White House and all the wars, and Stargate kind of persisted through all of it, right? I
Yep,
mean,
it just pushed on. Not just
pushed
that, but
on.
it had an actual general, a U.S. Army general, or was it Air Force general, on the show, playing himself. Pretty amazing.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Who's that?
I'll look it up for you. Uh, I kind of feel ashamed that I don't remember it offhand, but it was just he had 2 lines in an episode, 3 lines, so yeah, I might be forgiven for not remembering him.
I mean, if there's an actual general playing his actual general self on this show produced by a science fiction channel, I wonder if it had some kind of government push to keep going. Nope,
He
you're not
is
canceling
Michael
this
E.
one.
Ryan. I found it. Yeah,
Here's your technical advisor. He's a general. No,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
that's pretty ridiculously cool. But it ended in Obama's reign, 2011. Is that when
True.
Universe kind of got canceled out?
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
if it was going to start today, let's do the speculative part of speculative fiction.
Okay.
If it came back today with the Donald in the White House, what do you think Stargate would be? What do you think Stargate should be? Is this a ridiculous
I
question? Because as I'm saying it, it feels ridiculous.
Yeah,
Or
I kind of. I don't think it. I don't think there's a universe with Donald Trump as president of the United States where Stargate could come out as it did. Other shows which take place in a ridiculous faraway future or on ridiculously faraway planets. Yeah, like The Expanse and the others, but not Stargate. Stargate was too deeply rooted into Washington D.C. and into politics and generals, and it had a senate. He had senators which were being murdered on the show, and CIA and spies and travels and Russia and the
But
Cold War and
this is
everything.
the backside of the government, right? This is covert. American people don't know anything that's happening. This is completely a secret.
Well, yes, nobody's aware of it yet. So throughout the show, it's being kept a secret. Yes.
Donald Trump would be the perfect president for that because he'd be like off waving his arms someplace, making a fool of himself, and like the Stargate would just be able to do what it's doing completely invisible.
Yeah, they'll probably call him an alien from, imported and put in place by the aliens. So.
It's just unfortunate that the opportunity, I mean, they don't use it to pioneer new planets or anything or kind of spread humanity out to the stars. They just kind of use it as they open it occasionally, or it opens itself, right? It randomly goes.
You have to dial it. And it has addresses, yeah. And you dial a specific address and you go to a specific planet. And sometimes the humans sell guns, especially to who are trying to
Really?
fight their oppressors. Oh yeah, and there's a lot of philosophy going there, and there's a lot of moral discussion going into should we sell guns to these people? What's going to happen if we give the bomb to these people? And are we going to be responsible for the disappearance as a species, as a whole planet if we do this? And what happens if we don't? And then there are people who want to trade stuff for weapons, and sometimes, well, more often than not, they're denied.
What do you think would be the case in the world that we live in now? Would it be the military in charge of this, or would it be like the European Space Agency or NASA or some kind of global scientific force kind of looking into this thing going, okay, this is going to answer so many questions about humanity and who we are as a species and the universe in general? But no, we'll give you a nuclear bomb. Go ahead.
It wouldn't be NASA and it wouldn't be the army. It would be Trump himself. I mean,
Trump would be the only one in there in front of the
he would be making all the decisions. He would be the one traveling. He would be the one talking to the aliens and trying to make the deals.
Dude, the opportunity, if he did travel through a Stargate just to shut it off, click.
End of show.
What? Oh, he got lost in there. I don't know.
Now we can go on living your lives.
We're free.
Politics. I mean, Sweden really doesn't like Donald Trump. I have to say that. Everybody knows that. I mean, who does in Europe?
Period. I don't understand how he's our president. Honestly, I don't understand. But then again, I don't know.
You voted for him. Somebody voted
for him. Somebody voted for him.
Somebody must have done it.
A bunch of Russian people voted for him, I think, is what the rumor people are saying is. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter who the Russians vote for, as long as Putin is alive. He's going to be president.
He's a scary, scary guy, right? I mean, we live in an age of just an awesome storyline that I would love to be reading as opposed to living.
Exactly, yeah, from the outside. I grew up the first, 11, 12 years of my life in communist Romania. And we had a communist dictator at the helm. And I used to read up a lot of Soviet sci-fi, which is surprisingly good.
I just did a podcast on Stanislav.
Stanislav, yeah, the Polish writer. Yeah.
Yep.
He was Polish, but communist. Yeah.
But communist, not actually Russian. But it's a fascinating idea, Soviet science fiction.
Yeah.
What is your interpretation of it? Well, I mean, obviously you can compare. You've seen our greatest science fiction achievement in Stargate. How does that compare to the Soviet Union's?
It's really different. I have to tell you, it's very political, and they have a lot of sci-fi for kids. Sci-fi was really popular in Soviet Russia, in the Soviet Union, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early. Well, not in the 90s, but it was still popular even after the Soviet Union was gone. And people studied sci-fi novels in school, and they were deeply political. They were talking about utopic civilizations where everybody was a comrade and everything. But even so, they were good. They had valuable ideas. They were funny when they were meant to be funny. They had morals when that was called for, and there was drama when drama was called for. So they were really, really well written, albeit in a communist, in a socialist Spain. So not some good things did come out of the Soviet Union, amazingly.
But did they come out of the Soviet Union? Can you find them and purchase
You
them?
mean to read? Yeah, I should think so.
You
Yeah.
think so? There's no reason for them to have been destroyed.
No, certainly not. No.
So what language were they written in? Russian?
Well, originally yes, but they've been translated in all the languages of all the Eastern Bloc. So I've
Did you
read
read
them.
them in Romanian?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so fascinating, man. 11 years you said that you spent in communist Romania, and then all of a sudden it didn't have a government for a little while, right? I mean, it went to
Yeah, there was they call it a revolution, whatever it was, a coup d'état, big event. Yeah, that was 1989 in December, and they just caught the president. He tried to escape with a helicopter, just got him and shot him, and
they
everything
killed the
started off.
Romanian president.
Yeah, the communist
Oh,
guy, the dictator.
the dictator.
Yeah.
I mean
So
that's so fascinating. Does that flavor your science fiction at all, or do you think about the first part of your life, or does it come off as kind of like a dream? I mean, it had to have been so different after the coup d'état.
it was really different. Yeah, everything changed after that, and it's still changing, which is one of the reasons I live in Sweden now. It's not always changing into a good direction, but I do try to to dig into that and to find ideas in that part of my life, my experience, because it's so rich and so different, and different is good in sci-fi.
I mean, it's not well known either. A lot of people who grew up beyond that Iron Curtain, their stories aren't really trickling out. I mean, you get the news media's interpretation of things, but I would love to hear some
Oh
down on the
yes, yeah.
streets experiences
Oh,
of
some of
people
them
who.
are really cool. Yeah, and there are some American citizens who might tell you some interesting story. There's a guy who fled from communist Romania by stealing a plane, a fighter plane, a jet fighter, in the in the 80s, and he's now, I think, he runs a small airport somewhere in Tennessee.
Oh,
Yeah, there are
really?
lots of stories. Yeah, lots of interesting stories. Yeah.
Do you think you were better off before or after? Obviously, you think that the president was a dictator, so I mean, I guess that answers the question. It was a horrible experience.
Well, I mean, before that, there was no way to communicate with. I would have never been able to talk to you. There was no way to break the curtain, the Iron Curtain. There was no way to communicate with somebody who was in Western Europe or much less in the United States, and you were really, really restricted from traveling abroad. You might have, the chance of your life to go to United to the Soviet Union, but no chance at all to go to the West.
Yeah,
And yeah, so in light of that, it's certainly better now. But there's always a but.
yeah.
Yeah.
What is the but?
Well, if you want to go into details, um, it was because we were such a walled garden society. Things were a lot quieter. There were no drugs at all. Crime was really down. Everybody had a job. Um, Nobody had anything, so nobody had any reason to be envious on the other guy.
God, man, if you think about the Buddha saying that, possessions are the
Yeah,
root of unhappiness, and you had nothing.
true.
Did you think that the grass was greener on the other side, or did you think
Oh
this
yes,
is
yeah.
life and it's okay?
We used to listen to, illegally, of course, because it was a punishable deed, to listen to the Voice of America. The Voice of America is an American radio. It's a very socialist radio, but to us it was a capitalist vision. Now living in Sweden and looking at the Voice of America website, it's obviously really leftist. I mean, it's as left as you can go in the US. But for us, it was the expression of freedom and everything that was forbidden. So we definitely thought that not only was the grass greener, on the other side, we didn't have any grass at all.
It's almost as if humanity cannot govern themselves.
Yeah, it's almost like that. Yeah.
They just mess it up completely. I mean, this country, obviously, if you pay attention, my country, the United States, has had a horrible, horrible 20th century. I mean, every time you turn around, we were doing something horrible. I mean, every time I imagine in Russia, they turned around, they were doing something horrible too. There's corruption and assassinations and cover-ups and just horrible deeds happening. It's like, why are we letting people rule us? Why are we letting ourselves rule? We just need to create an AI that will rule us. I think that's the concept.
Yeah, I think there's been more than one sci-fi story on that around that idea.
We'll call it cybernetic. No, what is it called? I can't think. Cybernetic. What was Terminator? Cyberdyne? No.
Cyberdyne was the company, but the network itself was
Skynet.
Skynet, was it? Yes.
Yeah, we need a Skynet, man. We really need a Skynet. We can't do this ourselves anymore. This is not working out very well.
Yeah, all of your readers right now were just screaming into the headphones, Skynet, Skynet, Skynet.
Skynet,
Oh, by the way,
Skynet, awaken AI, help us. Oh my god.
Before I forget, I found the name of those two American writers, lady writers, who wrote really, really good, still write really, really good Stargate, fiction. And they are Joe Graham and Melissa Scott. And I think that not just a pair of writers, I think they're also partners, but I'm not really sure about that.
Melissa Graham, you said?
Graham, Graham. Graham.
Yeah.
Joe Graham and Melissa Scott. So
Melissa Scott.
I would sorry about my accent. I would encourage anybody to read their novels, especially their Stargate tie-ins. They're called tie-ins, aren't they? Tie-ins, when they tie into the universe.
Tie-ins? I don't know. I guess so.
Mm-hmm.
I guess so. I'm looking at Melissa Scott right now. Is she Little Rock, Arkansas? A science fiction and fantasy author known for science fiction work involving LGBT characters. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I guess it's just odd to imagine a world that wasn't accepted, but it's notable. And whenever she was writing for Little Rock, I was reading something. What was it called? Stargate.
Yeah.
But what was there? It was episodes. Season 7 Heroes is what you said.
Oh, that's definitely worth watching. And if you want to have a bit of fun, look at episodes 100 and 200.
Yeah, excellent. Do you think that, I mean, this is a very all over the place conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought that we covered a lot of good information. And as far as, just meeting you on Facebook and getting you on the show, I think it went quite well. Can you think of anything else that Stargate related that we needed to have mentioned and I just kind of talked over you and didn't let you say it?
Oh, well, I can talk about it, like forever. I'm just going to say there's a guy, one of the actors in Stargate, his name is the Canadian, called Mike Dopud, Topud. Is originally European. And he's played no less than 7 characters in Stargate. He's by far my and then went on, to feature in other sci-fi shows made by more or less the same team. And one of the things that Stargate fans like to do was just to identify Mike Dopud in all the episodes that you get to watch, because he's a Soviet officer in one, and then he's an alien in another one, and then he's a team member in another one, and then he's a rogue, whatever. And he's not just a great actor. He's a fun guy to point to on the screen. Hey, I've seen this guy before.
Has he been in other stuff, or is he a European actor solely?
He's a Canadian actor, and
okay.
Yeah, Mike Dopud. He's been in X-Men, for example, and he's kind of worked a lot as a stuntman at the beginning.
It's so cool. It actually is pretty cool. There's another podcast that I listen to all the time called Film Sack. And they have a section. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I love Star Trek. So I keep harkening back to it because I guess Star Trek is my Stargate. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, you and many others.
I don't know how I missed it, honestly, because this should have been my cup of tea, but I missed the whole thing. I didn't get into it, and I probably would have loved it if I had gotten into the everyday watching it thing. I must have worked nights or whatever. But there's a show, and every single episode they go into a movie, they discuss the movie, and at the end of it, they say who the actors were in that movie that also were in a Star Trek film series or what have you. And they're always a handful, always. And Star Trek is like the great unifier, basically, of actors in Hollywood. But this was made in Vancouver, Canada.
Right. Yeah, and just as a all the Stargate series have been in Vancouver. Yeah.
I think everything is made in Canada now. They're just giving away tax breaks or whatever. But
True.
anyway, bro, so enjoyable. And when is your second the book second
The
sequel
sequel
coming out?
Yeah, that I'm working on. I'm hoping to get it out this summer sometime. I got a couple of thousand words, couple of couple of thousand words left to write, and then it's the long and painful editing process. I hope the readers will like it as much as they like the first one. And I can't honestly wait to have it out of my system, and so I can move on to the next one.
Yeah, I know how you feel, man. I always want to be working on the next one too.
Mhm.
And your website is www.alexdeva.
It's just ALXX, 4 letters, ALXX.ro or .se, whichever of them. And
Okay,
so
and that's
other
the
readers-
greatest place to connect with your writing, where to buy it, and you personally, basically.
Absolutely. My books have their own websites, and the book, the sci-fi book, which is called Starship Doi, DOI, starshipdoi.com, has its own website, and there's a free audiobook preview of the first 4 chapters. You can read them and listen to them, and I've actually had a professional voice actor from Canada, of course, record the first 4
That's where
chapters.
all the actors are.
Exactly, yeah. There's nobody left. He's done an awesome job, and I feel free to include a sound bit in your podcast if you want. He's done a really awesome job with it, with my book.
Oh, so you produced it and had somebody read it? Did
Yeah,
you
exactly.
have to direct it as well, or did that all go out to a production company?
No, I sort of directed it too. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! And you're going to be doing that for the sequel also?
I hope I'll be able to afford it because this guy isn't cheap.
Yeah, I was going to say that production sounds magnificently expensive.
Yeah.
Man,
yes.
you are fully invited to come back on in the summertime to discuss your sequel when it comes out, and anything else that you'd like for that matter. If there's another concept of speculative fiction that you want to talk about, definitely would love to have you on.
Thanks so much, Bryan. It was really good being on.